not going fast, I might as well not be alive.
A lot of the drivers have a background in illegal street racing. It's all just part of youth culture.
But as the culture has moved on, they've also wanted to compete at more and more of a higher level against better and better racers. The street racers are actually moving off the streets and onto tracks and organized events. Everyone we meet, all the drivers, most of them come from a street racing past.
If you get hooked, if you think you like this is something that I would like to do, then the street is nowhere for you. There's no clocks, there's no timers. You don't really know if you're progressing. You risk having your car taken away, you risk killing people. You know, it really doesn't make any sense. The transition going from a street racing to a pro for us is pretty natural, just because you get kind of worn out with going to the street races, and you know, where's it end?
It's not that the guys who do it are wanting to break the law. They just don't have enough places to race at.
Operation Speeding Ticket was created in conjunction with our partnership with Irwindale Speedway.
It's a street legal program where anybody can bring their car out to our property.
We're usually averaging about 250 race cars every Thursday night, and depending on the weather, you're going to get a couple thousand spectators here.
When you're actually out on the track, you're actually drag racing for time, you can actually see and push yourself a lot further and see a lot more results.
If you like this, you need to go onto a racetrack. You need to get professional, you need to step it up a bit, and that's where you'll truly experience fun and what you were looking for. And you guys should come out to the racetrack and do this for real, is what it really boils down to.
If you look at this entire tuning scene, everything comes from Japan. In the early 70s, there was these street tribes, and they called them bosozoku.
They were kind of looked upon as the guys that make the trouble. They're out there, you know, racing or drifting or making a lot of noise in the streets.
They were drag racing those cars even back in the 70s and 80s, but they weren't import cars to them. To them, those are their domestic muscle cars.
Drifting, obviously, it started in the hills of Japan. You know, there were people that had the foresight to turn it into a series in Japan, and then it came stateside.
Import drag racing sort of started as a spawn of traditional drag racing.
Kids saw other people drag racing. You know, IROC's American cars. Well, they wanted to do that, but all they had was their hand-me-down Honda Accords and Civics.
The scene in Europe right now is kind of like what the scene was like in Southern California in 2000. It's very young, very new and exciting. It's awesome.
North American guys have a little bit of a chip on their shoulders, and the same thing with the European guys.
Europeans can definitely beat the top Japanese drifters.
The Japanese guys look at North America and they look at Europe with a little bit of an elitist view.
There's no reason why any of the drivers who are on the same level can't go over there.
The Americans and the Europeans are catching up, taking tremendous strides. If you look at drifting, time attack, drag racing, the Americans have surpassed the Japanese, in fact. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We've heard of events as far as the Virgin Islands. Australia is doing a lot of events. So it's moving quite around the world right now.
These guys don't want to risk it all out on the streets anymore. They want a new place to compete against the very best cars and the very best drivers where they can push themselves and their equipment to the ultimate level of competition.
We're seeing a trend of these mega events that incorporate a lot of different elements. There's grip and drift and drag all at one event. And it's great for the fans because they could experience all these different events.
Drifting and import drag, it came from the streets. It's something that was never necessarily meant to be a big organized event like what we have now, but you know, the kids took it and ran with it.
One of the first things you'll notice when you go to one of these events is that the crowd themselves are very different. It's not the same motorsport crowd.
Almost like a three-ring circus type of atmosphere where there's a car show in one area and there's Jello wrestling another area, and bikini show.
All the models, the umbrella girls, like the Falcon girls are, you know, some of the hottest yet most down-to-earth models out there.
Everyone goes away with a smile on their face because they get to see something that they didn't really bargain on.
You've got 15,000 plus people that all have similar interests, all at one spot.
It's not just about the cars and the racing. There's a lot more going on as well.
You could break our culture down into action sports, art, music, fashion, and cars. Done.
To be honest, the competitors don't really look at it as winning a national championship, but they look at it as beating the other guy.
I wouldn't identify myself as a competitive person, to be honest with you, but I guess I am. To drive, to do this, to win, it's almost like it's part of our core being.
車乗ってない時はみんなと仲良くしたいし、乗った瞬間ねみんなぶっ殺してやろうかと思ってる。絶対負けるわけいかないから。
You know, when I get in the car, you know, I kind of start being more aggressive. I'm not yelling at myself in the car or yelling at them and getting heated. Everybody's like enemies, you know. That's kind of how I get excited and pumped, a more competitive edge.
友達同士で和気あいあい仲良くだと多分うまくはならないんで、やっぱ人を蹴落とすぐらいの気持ちがないとダメだと思いますね。
Mindset is everything.
I don't think there's any fear involved with what I do.
I'm not a big believer in luck. When I'm at the line with people, like some of the big baller drivers, you know, I'll bust out the voodoo stick and they just get kind of weirded out, like, is this fool trying to do voodoo?
If you and I line up, it's on. You know, we're going to battle. You might be my boy, but when we line up, we're arch enemies, and I'm doing everything to lop your head off with my sickle at the light.
If you're scared, go to church. You know, you shouldn't be doing this stuff.